I'm Tracey Neal, and this is the nitty-gritty of modern caregiving. Today, our special guest is Dawn Jefferson, an educator and caregiving professional. She is also a daughter who lost both of her parents to dementia. Dawn is the Education and Support Coordinator at Insight Memory Care in Fairfax, Virginia. A native New Yorker, she has nurtured a 20-year career that included teaching English and working as an administrator. She worked in both hospital and school settings while earning her Master of Religion and Education at Columbia University's Teachers College and spent several summers in Vermont completing another master's degree. Yes, count them, that is 2, this one in English. And then Dawn went on to get her Master of Divinity at Yale Divinity School. After being ordained, she now serves as the Minister of Missions and Justice at Hope UCC in Alexandria, Virginia. Honestly, her accolades go on and on in the caregiving space. I just touched on them. But Dawn is here because she taught me 2 simple words that totally disrupted how I care for my 85-year-old mother. And I want you to know about it. We have a lot to unpack on this one, folks, but we begin today, as we always do, with a moment of self-care. I need it as much as you do. And with the help of an amazing group called A Beautiful Chorus, we're going to exhale together. Ready? Okay, here we go. Breathe it in, breathe it in, let it out, breathe it in, let it go. Breathe it in, breathe it in, let it out, breathe it in, let it go. Breathe it in, breathe it in, let it out, breathe it in, let it go. Breathe it in. Now that we are centered and grounded, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Despite the fact that over 70% of the nation's 53 million family caregivers acknowledge that support groups would be helpful and beneficial, less than half have ever tried one, with the majority of caregivers unsure about their accessibility. Well, I hope after today's lively conversation, that will begin to change.
Dawn, thank you so much for joining us today. You wear a lot of hats in this caregiving space, and I hope that our viewers and listeners picked up in your introduction that one of them is that you offer support groups to people,
Yes.
and that's how we know each other. So the group that I'm a part of is for kids who are taking care of their parents, and that's about 37% of the caregiving population in the United States, so it's a pretty big group. But one of the things that came out there was these 2 words that you said to me that just absolutely shifted the way I was thinking about caregiving. And we're going to get into that in just a little bit because I want folks to know about it and hopefully it'll have some impact in their lives too. But first, I always get the sense in those groups that you can feel what we're feeling. You know the confusion, you know the fear, and I think that is because you help to care for your parents. I would love for you to take us back, and your mom in particular. Introduce us to the beautiful Miss Alma.
Miss Alma. So Miss Alma is the eldest of 5. And so she's that first sibling, right? She had a way of filling up the space in her room, directing people, helping them know what needed to happen. You went to her for things if you were confused. She had an idea, an answer, advice. She could be overbearing at times, but oftentimes she could also just give you space. Like when she really respected you, she would let you do what you needed to do. But she always wanted people to know, I'm here for you. If she would talk to anyone, that was what she would say. And so I think for me in the taking care of my mother, that echoed so much in the sense of knowing how many people my mother had taken care of in different ways, families, kids, writing resumes and college essays, and wanting to make sure that my mom also not only was taken care of, but felt taken care of. So my parents actually divorced later. And so in that moment, which I actually think is a very challenging thing when you're going into this phase of sort of the senior world of elder care, when you're single, it is actually very different. And so for my mom, mom, I wanted her to feel less single if possible, and to make sure that she felt like, listen, I'm not going to leave you out here. So she always used to joke, she's like, when you send me to Shady Pines, which was the reference to the Golden Girls, the Dorothy and Sophia relationship. She says, well, at least come and visit me. At least come and visit me. So anyway, the concept of my parents being these wonderful, vibrant, sort of black bourgeois, moved to the suburbs kind of couple who, was going to have their kid be in private school, and they were going to be different than a lot of the people they grew up with. Not like flashy. My parents were actually rather humble, but they wanted things to have meaning. They wanted to be long lasting. And so they raised me that way. And so when I started to ask questions of things and saw some things slowing down and they weren't responding in the same way they used to when they were in some ways becoming more dependent, like wanting me to solve problems that felt like, you can do this, you're good. I mean, independence was a big thing in my family. And me being a strong, independent Black woman was like the goal of goals. And so there got to be a point where my mother was not able to complete her taxes. It's so funny how time goes. And that I looked and I said, so when did you get them in? Oh, I never turned. What do you mean? So then it was, then it was another year. Oh, I'm working on them. This is a fastidious person, right? Who takes care of all kinds of details, and money is the thing she makes sure is. So those were the signs that made me know something was wrong. And then after a long period of time, noticed the apartment wasn't the way it had been. Also a person who wanted to make sure all the corners are clean and, she's cleaning the oven, that kind of person. And hospital corners were not happening. And so, those signs of like, well, are you okay? And she knew she wasn't, but then there's that switch of, I don't want you to worry about me. So signs, wonders. At the time, actually, I had just gotten married. I was starting seminary. And it was this moment of like, here I am with a new start. Let me push ahead. Let me go. And I had to slow down and check in on my parents. And they were both really struggling because, again, they were separate. So they were single, trying to figure out how to navigate being older and then basically having dementia. My father had mild cognitive dementia, probably a little vascular dementia. And then my mother had Alzheimer's disease. And I could go on a whole other story about the roads of Medicaid and Medicare, which both my parents were on. But nevertheless, I finally left seminary, moved to Virginia in our home now. And then we moved my mom from New York to go into independent care here. And then we realized that she was actually a little farther beyond independent care. So we had to sort of mad dash her into assisted living. And that was probably when she was thriving in that sense. So when she finally had a place to land, she wasn't stressed about the dementia. She felt like she was going to be taken care of. And then COVID hit. So we had a whole moment of more isolation and then the sort of general decline of what does happen with dementia. But the journey was a really hard one. So as you say, we can go through things in our lives. I mean, and if I had to put it in an ordinal sequence, that was the hardest thing I've ever done, which is to say, not only love my parents through struggle, because we've done that. That's what happens in life. But the moment where I'm having to hold them and then not recognize them in the strength and the vibrancy that I had received, had always known them, right? And so that's a part of that loss of like, wow, she really is not understanding what I'm saying, or that's not the way the mom I, was used to would respond. So as I started to go through things in my life, you want to call your mom and tell her about the new job or the person that you met or the way God spoke to you. That was different. My mom really, for a good portion of my life, was my best friend because I am a little bit strange. I'm a little older than I was slightly precocious. And in a lot of the settings, I was the only Black kid or the only tall kid or the only kid that went to church. And so a lot of the times being in a minoritized space, my mom was the person I would turn to, but she also knew, she felt like, well, you're special. I'm not going to let you feel less than just because you're different. And so we would chat, we would talk. And so in many ways, my maturity is because I spent a lot of time with my mother and her friends as opposed to my own friends. But, losing a friend like that was very challenging. And then being also the person who was holding her up in the loss. So a lot of that dynamic is the thing I identify with because it's very complex. It's very confusing. There are no right answers. There's not a right way to do it. And I feel like the expectation is that there is, especially for women, especially for daughters, taking care of the mom, all of the expectations in our culture, all of these different places of what is it to do right by your people.
But sometimes we expect that of ourselves, Dawn.
No,
sometimes we hold
internal monologue.
That internal dialogue. Absolutely. Like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it well enough? Yeah.
Exactly. And that was the irony, right? Because to me as a woman, the voice in my head is my mother. And so the voice in my head is my mother talking to me about taking care of my mother. And I had to come to terms with that, right? Because in many ways, the voice in my head, i.e., my mother's voice, is not necessarily a voice of grace. It's a voice of challenge, some more critique than necessary. And I had to come to terms with, what am I able to do, right? And I had been raised in many ways to solve problems with education and intellectualism. And this is not a situation that you can solve with that. And even emotions, a feeling weren't enough. And the biggest faith in all the world. I mean, I'm clergy, right? I believe in God, but the belief in God isn't going to change the fact that this person is declining, and having to really just sort of sit with that and recognize my own humanity, what I'm able to do and not do. And again, so that there's this, I think there's this narrative of, when you get through the desert, the children of Israel, just press on, child, press on, just keep going, just keep going. And I feel like there's something about this disease, but even sort of the in-depth caretaking with chronic illness, I'm just not sure that that's the way to go, because when you push yourself too far, then you're not there to help anymore. Beyond the oxygen mask metaphor, I've seen people sort of whittle away because they are trying so hard to be successful at being a caregiver. And I basically in my journey saw that the times when I stopped trying so hard, because my mom knew me better than many people. And there were days, this is her in dementia saying, why don't you just sit down just for a minute? I know you're helping me. I know you're doing a whole lot. Could you just sit? And, my mom's most intense dream was to spend the rest of her life hanging out with me and my wife. So she's like, I just want to sit and talk to you. I want to hear about your day. What did you do? What are you reading? Tell me a scripture. She just really wanted to be with me. And I was trying to do for her. And that came to a head in a moment where I was exhausted. I, went to a whole nother level of depression. And I would say when I talk to people about visits, there was a moment when I stopped trying so hard with the visits, and I had to stop having expectations, stop trying to solve and fix everything, stop trying to make the nursing home what it wasn't, and just be with what was and remind myself that I was her daughter and she wasn't going to be there forever. So what story did I want to hear? What song do we want to sing together till we got hoarse? How I know how to make her laugh like no one. And so I wanted to do that as opposed to trying to make it better. And I watched that. It's really a process. I watch it for lots of caregivers who go through the whole medical phase where they're trying to solve all the things with the medicine and the prescriptions and the doctors. And there just comes a time when you realize that is not actually what is necessary now. What is necessary now is that I sit and I hold your hand here on this bed.
That was the wake-up call for me. Let's get right into those two words. Everything you just said can be summed up in what you said to me in that meeting that night. You said, do less.
Do less.
Do less. And for me, again, what are you talking about? The world wants you to do more. You got to do more. And I was on, I think, the same road that you were. Like, you got to do this and that, and you have to do it well. And that is the mark of success as a caregiver.
Right.
But it's not.
It's not. It's not. That's world culture. That's so much of everything. And again, I'll write the book soon. Trust me, Tracey, I'll publish it soon. But it's this very ironic road, right, of Black womanhood, training Black womanhood, how to perform and then realize at the end of it all, what the ancestors did is what actually is necessary. That you set the spell. Let's set a spell right here on this porch and tell me a story. Drink this tea. And let us pray together or sit together and not do, right? So this culture of human being, not human doing became, and that's the story I tell also about my mother, who worked very hard her whole life. That's what she was told, what you did. And when we were in the nursing home with other people, this community, she didn't know how to crochet. She didn't do puzzles. She didn't have any pastimes because all she did her life was work. And I said to myself, when I end up in a home, what will I spend my time doing if I have only worked my whole life? And it really, we could get into a whole bunch of other things that could be named, but a lot of us are acculturated that labor is the reason why we exist. And a lot of this journey transformed that for me, not only as a Christian or a theologian, but just as a daughter, in the sense of it was modeled that just working was not actually going to be fulfilling. And I'd rather puzzle my way into dementia than to sit idly because I don't even know what to do to fill my time except to try to work.
I saw that with my father. My father had Parkinson's disease. We lost him years ago.
Mm.
He had no hobbies, nothing that he did just for pleasure. He worked. He was in the military. He was a colonel. He worked hard, Pentagon and everything. But that was it, And then after retirement and things start going wrong,
Right.
what do you do? Right. You're twisting the thumbs with nothing to do. I'm wondering too, you mentioned being a minister, which I found extraordinary because I didn't know that initially when we started talking in the groups. And then that adds another layer to it. So I wonder a couple of things.
Sure.
One, has this tested your faith? Have you ever been mad at God over this? And what do you do if you're a minister?
Oh, sure. I was actually, my godson got leukemia years before that. And I thought I was like, how could allow this baby to have cancer? But this trumped that mostly because it was so connected to my own identity. I'm an only child, and to have both parents it was bigger than coming out. It was bigger than a lot of other things, right? For me, I read a book by Jonathan Swinton, who is an amazing Scottish theologian who started out as a nurse taking care of people with cognitive disabilities and ended up becoming a professor. And he wrote a book about the practical theology of dementia. So I was in seminary at this moment, and I was like, okay, so I'm in seminary for a reason. And it becomes this thing. Who can I minister to? What is God? Is God trying to tell me something? Because sometimes God's not. Sometimes you pretend God's saying something. But I was like, what's happening in this moment? Like, what is this faith about? And in Swinton's book, he talks about the fact that God will always hold us in God's memory. And that restored my faith, which was to say, there is a road here where we actually need to stop pretending that our independence is enough, and we have to embrace our own dependency on each other. And so for me, the dementia became a way to understand how interdependent, but really we actually need other people. We absolutely need God. And the idea that we can do anything without that kind of help is a problem. I think that's a problem for us to actually, because we think, oh, we worked hard, we earned it, it was our time, it was our turn. None of those things is actually real, And so a lot of it's grace, a lot of it's mercy. And I think I got mad at God, but the more I talked to my therapist, I actually got mad at my parents.
Oh.
In the sense of preparation and what had they done. So they had spent so much of their life taking care of me that they didn't prepare for themselves. So the anger turned in the sense of like, what do people have control over? What can people do? And I realized that my parents had actually been ill for longer beyond dementia based on depression, a whole bunch of other things that were going on for them. It was tough. I mean, I mostly was asking God, why is this my story? Because I got to a place where I was like, well, I'm a black woman. I'm queer. I'm a minister. I won't be a billion. I'm like, can they give me one more thing? And of course, God is not giving us anything. This is an experience. And as my mentor growing up used to say, if somebody said, well, why does she have to have cancer? And she would say, well, who else do you want to have it? And so I asked myself, like, what about this situation suits something I have? And I do believe that I always tell people I was born for the wilderness. I embrace that my life has been challenging, and it is easier for me to sit with other people in that challenge, knowing that this is part of life, than to expect, rose-colored rainbows all the time. They're going to come. But I actually would rather make sure that someone is not alone on this journey, because it gets very isolating when you're taking care of another person in all of these ADLs and every day and washing and cooking and cleaning, and to have another person know the exhaustion of that, the overwhelm, that in some ways, no matter what you do, you're not finished, and the person's still going to be ill. Right. Like, so the cancer narrative usually has some concept of like victory, they won the war. It's just not what happens in dementia. Everyone's story ends the same. You know what I mean? And so in that, you're like, wow, well, what is this all for? And so that to me becomes the faith message. What it's for is the journey, right? Walking with is the reason that's what we're really called to do. We are called to walk with each other. Expecting more than that, I'm not sure where that comes from, but it was my absolute pleasure to walk with my mother, to hold her hand. And when she was afraid, I couldn't always change it or fix it, but she was not alone.
Yes. And you know that, and you can hold that in your heart and hold that in your mind. 53 million caregivers in the United States. And one thing I'm learning from all of these different support groups, including the one that I'm on with you, is that loneliness, I think, has to be the number one issue that comes up. It can lead to depression, as you said, to drinking. Everyone feels so isolated. But it's actually a community of a lot of people.
So many people, that's the irony, is that so many people are going through, that was what it was to be a high school teacher for all of these adolescents. But I'm the only person, like, you all feel the same way. You all feel rejected. You all feel unseen, if you only could see. And so I feel like, honestly, of all the things I did, and my wife and I always joke, we're pretty educated, right? She's an attorney, I have degrees, but nothing trained or prepared us for dementia. And so, in that moment, how can I either A, train or prepare other people? But also the thing that worked was a support group. I mean, my therapist was good, but the support group added that extra human layer of hearing someone's story and both empathizing with it and being like, oh my God, I had the same thing happen to me. Oh my, did she just right there in the middle of the floor? You're like, yep, that's what happened. I mean, people, you can joke, people are telling stories and you laugh because it's just so ludicrous that the same bizarre thing happened to you last month. So not feeling like you're the only one, that you're crazy, somehow you've been given the short straw of life or something. Other people are going through the same. We're in a moment where a lot of people are going to be experiencing similar suffering. And so we need to reach out and sort of really hold each other in the truth of that.
But the thing is, you have to be the one to make that call, to make that connection. And if you're like me, and I'm actually a little shy and a little introverted, and it's not easy to be in a group and like share all my feelings. So that was probably my wall. I was like, I don't think I could do it. Oh, I tried. But I just want people to know that you just go in and listen. Just observe. Even if you don't say anything, seek out a group just so you know that somebody's got their arm out and they're walking down the same road that you're walking.
It's true. It really is true. And I hadn't expected it because, I mean, I guess the culture of support groups is something's wrong with you, right? Or something like that. But for me, the space of hearing, right, also let me be reflective about what is actually happening to me right now? What is going on? And the truth of it. I think hearing it out of the mouths of other people also helped me know this is really happening. And I'm still here. I'm still here in the really hard, chaotic experience that I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Everything I worked up to set up to do the thing for the other thing might break and fall apart and, whatever. She's going to have another wound and another medication's not going to work. But for right now, I'm not by myself and other people get what's going on. That was the thing. I mean, I had lots of friends. I got friends in all kinds of spaces, but I was rare in that I'm younger than most of my friends anyway, but most of them hadn't had a parent with dementia. So they just did not understand what I was talking about. They were trying to give me advice. So I'm like, no, you don't understand. Mostly because people don't understand dementia. People think they understand it based on a concept of memory loss. There are so many other symptoms. So my mother had hallucinations. She had delusions, and a lot of them she kept from us. Because of the culture of delusions and hallucinations, only crazy people have those. So she was like, I don't want you to think I'm crazy. I'm like, is this medication? Like, what we need to get, is this a UTI? Let's clarify. And once you live through that, you realize, wow, this can be a part of someone's dementia journey. And she was afraid for her life. She thought there were policemen coming to attack her. And that's partly why she moved. We were able to convince her. We were like, if you come down, we'll move you. And she was like, you'll do all that? I said, yeah. And then she said, then I can rest. And I said, yes, you can come rest with us. So all that to say is that a lot of people are going through a lot of things personally where they shouldn't have to be doing it alone. They need to share the harder parts of what dementia is about. And if they're trying to take care of somebody, because this is not something that people should have to do independently. This is not about how smart you are or how much you got your stuff together. This is a very difficult thing. I mean, they're not all perfect. They're not all going to do the thing, but I found that to work for me. And that's why I was like, well, whatever I can do to replicate this. And I tell people, it's not a secret. To me, a support group should leave space for people to vent. It's actually really psychologically healthy to have a place where you are allowed to be angry, disgusted, frustrated, disappointed. Our culture doesn't really allow space for that, right? And so when you can go to a group of people and say, if she does this one more time, why does she keep asking the same question over and over? And so everyone in the group is like, yeah, the questions, girl. So it's just helpful to be able to share that also, that was really validating.
Love
It was
that.
great. It was great. That's what I love, to be able to continue to do this and to offer that to people virtually, in person,
Yeah.
however it may be. And to your point, people find their way to it. Some people take forever. I've had people on a mailing list for a year, and like the second year of they're like, I didn't think I was gonna come, but I saw the email, and I'm here. And I'm like, well, welcome, welcome.
Yep. All right. Now, this takes us, as we begin to wrap up here,
Yeah.
to the second question that I wanted to ask you. So, as a minister, as a counselor, as the host of these groups, you're hearing a lot of stories. Are you able to compartmentalize, or does it just pull you back into your own grief? How in the world do you do that?
I don't know that I have an answer. I'll just share. It's twofold, which is to say, yes, it does help me to process the grief. It helps me to remember. So, for example, even for this experience, I had to flip through some things and look at my mom's, funeral booklet again, which I haven't seen in a while, the celebration of life. Those moments I find to be very healing. And so, ironically, at least again for us, for dementia, the sadness is the loss of memory, the fact that you lose memories. And something about this process for me lets me hold these memories. It actually lets me relive them and talk about my parents in ways that almost sort of resurrect the meaningfulness of their experience. So for me, it sort of gives a purpose to the experience. And then, in sort of a sacrificial way, I get to be useful through my pain, through the challenge, to hear what people are saying. And even if I'm quiet, because I practice, I'll be quiet and just not. Some people say, when you nod on that Zoom, just to nod and say, yes, what you are saying makes sense to me. So there are definitely days where I have to do like I used to do when I was a dean at the end of the school day. And, you have to brush off the things that, you can't take home with you. You don't want that to stick. I do my little exercise. So that is important to make sure that you don't hold on to things. But at the same time, there's something about the space of the support group where we all are holding it in a spiritual way. And I don't want that to fall through. It's a sacred sort of almost sanctuary for me in that place, because it's holy exchanges that are going on, prayers, if you will, that are people are sort of being like, please, somebody help me if you have an idea, any idea, just help me. That part's important. So I'm finding it a blessing. And so that's what I realized in this job. I did a lot of things as a pastor. So I actually find it enervating and very exciting to feel that useful and that present with people. So I love doing it. And so I did it for a while as a volunteer, and now it's my job. And it's like, this actually is my passion, and I feel called to it. So it does feed me to be present with people in pain. I think that that's a calling of some people's journey. It's sort of a chaplaincy role. And also I feel like it's important to navigate for people the process and the journey of mourning and grief. We don't discuss mortality enough. And in many ways, because I stand in this moment of having gone through the quote entire journey, it helps people know that, there's a finish line, if you will, but you can make it there. And as I stand here sort of looking back, I think it can be encouraging to people to be like, okay, she's still on here. This didn't take her out.
Very encouraging. And I love that you talked about feeding, because you're being fed, but we're being fed too. And I've never thought about it as a sacred space, but it really is that. And I'm going to enter the meetings now with that in mind. And so it sort of elevates it to another level. So thank you for that. So any last advice that you want to share with our viewers or listeners about just the caregiving journey, or taking care of themselves, making it through?
Because a lot of times I think, what would I have done differently? And I tell people a lot of the time, first of all, that logic usually fails you. Sometimes trying to be so logical. The irony is that most of the caregivers I know are A-type perfectionist folks who have handled things before, and that's why they're the person handling them. But ironically, those people don't give themselves the credit for being the actual manager, producer of many lives. So we spend a lot of time beating ourselves up of not doing enough. And it's like, but you're the one doing it. You are holding the bag. You are the CEO of a very complicated situation, and it doesn't need to be perfect. The person's still here. Bills got paid. And a lot of people wouldn't be able to manage that. So part of it is to give yourself credit for doing a very difficult thing that a lot of people turn their back on. But for whatever reason, there's some child that does it, and there are other children that don't. For whatever their reason, really no shade, but like the fact that you stood up into it, I think that that's something to be applauded and sort of really embraced. And secondly, just that the people that you love are people. And so the concept of failing them isn't very real because they're just people. They're not deities. You know what I mean? And the same failures they had before, like you had to think sometimes, I'm like, my mom was mean sometime when I was little. So when I remind myself of their humanity, it's okay that I got a little bit of frustrated. It's okay that I might have raised my voice. I apologized. I'm sorry. But I'm human in the same way that they're human. And if I was, 25 years from now, if my nieces are taking care of me, thank you for not leaving me in the house by myself. Thank you for coming by and making, as my mother would say, that does not dribble down my face, right? Like, make sure, give me a napkin. Somebody give me a napkin. So I want to be able to give what I would want, to receive. And then lastly, my point being that it's okay if they're not perfect in everything. So I always tell the story, and my mother was glamorous. She could have been a model, and she was all about her, face, be finished, makeup, the whole thing. And as people get older, that kind of thing is hard to maintain. And so she couldn't do it for herself. But when I would get there, I would try to put a little mint, put a little color on my lip, do the things. And there got to be a time where we had to go to the doctor one day, and I just could not get it all together. And my mother, because people with dementia hide things, she hid her wig in between the mattress and the springboard. I couldn't find it. But anyway, we had to go to the doctor. It was time. So she went to the doctor without her wig on. And I couldn't find her lipstick. And there are these days that you have to embrace. It's not a wig day. It's not a wig day. And it's okay.
It's okay.
It's really going to be okay. So there's my point is that we sometimes create a performance of wellness that is not necessary. It's okay for her to go to the doctor without a wig because she's sick. And there's still dignity. There still can be dignity in that. But trying to kill myself to find the wig, my wife was like, we have to go. And I'm like, we got to get the wig. And she was like, do we have to get away?
Do we really?
Right. So focus on what's the main thing right now? The main thing is when I was getting her to the doctor's appointment and being nice to her on the way, not having an attitude because you couldn't find the wig. So keeping the main thing, right? Stephen Covey. But seriously, there's a grace that we have to extend to ourselves. We are doing something that is very challenging in caregiving. I have never been a natural parent, just a teacher, but sustaining the whole life of another person, I mean, hello. It's a lot just to keep your own self alive and fed and washed and cleaned and looking like, you're okay. So the idea that you were nurturing a whole other person, no matter how old they are or what's happening with them, that's a lot of energy. And I just really want to let people applaud themselves. My therapist always says, there's a moment in your life where you know something's going well. You got to tap it in. It might be hard, but I'm like, I want to tap it in today. Everybody got fed. Everybody got clean clothes on. Come on. Amen. Like, this was a successful day. So you just sometimes have to tap it in. It didn't all fall apart. Good things happened, but mostly important, you're there. You're with them. And again, if there were anything I could have right now, it'd be my mom sitting in this chair. Even if she was sleeping, drooling, I would love to have her here. So that connection, that presence is something that's going to matter to you later on. So be present in it. They don't need everything to be perfect. They just need to not be alone.
So well said. Let me tell you, I love talking to you. I love listening to you. I feel like I've been in a counseling session. I want to take notes. Oh my gosh, Dawn. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling me, talking to me. I love talking about this because, again, I think it intersects so many important things. Yeah. Family, relationships, identity, how we care for each other, which is what we're here for. It's a beautiful thing to be cared for. So I'm hoping we can continue to practice that with each other.
You set the bar. That's it. Now we have the goal. We have the goal in sight. And now we know how to do it, Dawn.
And the goal is to do less.
Do less. Yes. Now I get it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracey.
This has been wonderful.
Be well, everyone. Stay encouraged.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Dawn Jefferson, Education and Support Coordinator at Insight Memory Care. Here are today's top takeaways. Seek human connection. Avoid isolation as much as you can. Loneliness can lead to many destructive behaviors. Give yourself grace. It is okay to be frustrated. You're only human, and so is your loved one. And do less. Let go of perfection. Caregiving doesn't have to be so regimented. Enjoy simple things that show your loved one they're not alone. That does it for this episode. Take care, everyone. Remember to exercise, eat right, and seek joyful moments. Caregiving family, let's stay connected. You are not alone. Special thanks to A Beautiful Chorus. You can find them at beautifulchorus.com. Candy Marketing Store. and Emma Bettneal for graphics. Visit our YouTube channel and don't forget to subscribe.